Surely that's correct. And this morning when we broke the news of the order, I think it was pretty clear, to be honest, because this morning when we were in the newsroom, there were a series of tweets that were put out by the Ministry of Home Affairs by the spokespersons in the MHA talking about how shops across India, especially in rural areas, most shops could reopen except for those in malls or shopping complexes. It also spoke about how in urban areas, all shops, standalone shops, neighborhood shops, shops in residential complexes can remain open except for those in malls once again. But it made it very clear. That for hotspots and for containment zones, it was not valid, and there was a little bit of confusion. But I think the MHA had to sort of come out with further clarification only because some states have questions. Let me go across to Mr. P.V. Ramesh, who's joining us on the broadcast this evening. Mr. P.V. Ramesh is a senior IAS officer. He's also the Special Chief Secretary to the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh. Let me go across to him. Mr. Ramesh, thank you for joining us here on Republic TV. Good evening. What is your state doing, Mr. Ramesh, regarding the MHA guidelines? We know that Telangana is not opening any shops as a precautionary measure. I'm talking about the non-essential shops following the MHA guidelines. What about your state?
Good evening and thanks for having me. Let me first set the record straight that our state has had a very clear strategy right from the beginning. We are actually the first state that started screening every foreign returnee and their contacts. So we've built up a very robust system at the grassroots level because of the large number of village functionaries that our Chief Minister has established who monitor every household on a day-to-day basis. So we have a strong surveillance system in place. We have built up a robust testing capacity. As you know that we are testing the largest number of persons on a day-on-day basis. Today, it's been more than 6,000. And we've been able to mark out mandals as red zones, orange zones, and the green zones. Our Chief Minister is one of those who is strongly committed to striking a harmonious balance between lives and livelihoods. So he's taken special measures to ensure the agriculture commodities, the horticulture commodities, the aquaculture farmers and the workers are not put to hardship, that they maintain a physical distance while undertaking these tasks. So there's a gradual easing of the restrictions in the rural areas and the green zones, while we continue to monitor and we continue to maintain a close surveillance. We are also picking up and strengthening our hospital system, both for COVID and also for other emergencies.
Yeah. Mr. Ramesh, while we're on this question of easing restrictions and the balance between how you're going to sort of ensure life is back to normalcy in green zones versus the kind of measures you will continue to have to continue to take in hotspots, containment zones, orange zones, let me ask you this question, because this evening we had some indication from the Maharashtra government or sources within that May 3rd may not be a realistic date to sort of lift restrictions. We know that even the MHA order itself is not applicable in the state of, rather in the city of Mumbai at least, and Pune, which are affected. So these two cities, the lockdown may be extended. Do you have any sort of a blueprint like that for the state of Andhra Pradesh? The reason I'm asking you is because you work very closely with the Chief Minister Jagan Mohan Reddy.
Mr. Dhiranjan, let me say this. The situation is very different. The conduct of this virus and the trajectory of the disease pattern is changing from on an hour-to-hour basis. So it would be premature on my part to calibrate the situation as we speak now. Today is only 25th. We still have another 8 days to go. And our disease situation is our we will take it because we have surveillance system. We will have to take a measured call when the time comes.
Okay. Okay, what we'll also do is we'll use this opportunity, Mr. Ramesh, since you're a very senior officer uh, and you're directly, of course, interacting with the Chief Minister and monitoring the situation in your state. We're also taking this opportunity to ask our viewers to dial us in. We have Mr. P.V. Ramesh with us. He's a very senior IAS officer and advisor to Jagan Mohan Reddy. You can dial in on Republic TV and ask him any questions, because a lot of people, Mr. Ramesh, have questions about lockdown movement. You know, this is something that we do on a daily basis. We've been doing it for over a month now, since the 21-day curfew was in 21-day lockdown was enforced. We are taking questions from people and putting it to our guests so that because you all know much more than what we journalists do, and you will be able to guide our viewers. So the numbers are on your screens. It's 022 6243 1010. You can dial in on that number and we'll put some of the questions to Mr. P.V. Ramesh. So while we line up a few callers, Mr. Ramesh, I want to ask you about how effective your state has been in terms of handling the COVID graph and the different measures in terms of the treatment that you are going to take. And today, some headlines that we covered in a big way this morning was that states of Karnataka, neighboring Telangana, using plasma therapy. Bihar has also said that they would use plasma therapy. So how is your state handling this?
Let me say this. I mean, I'm a doctor myself. I mean, the important
aspect is really to the early identification of those who are infected. The earlier you identify, the more effective your treatment is. I mean, whatever people may say, if I know that, and majority of the patients that we're seeing are either asymptomatic or they have mild symptoms. And we have kept a special tracker on those who have a higher risk for more severe cases, severe symptoms. People above years of age. I mean, those have
other existing chronic diseases. Now, these are the people who are likely to have more severe symptoms. And so we move them very quickly to hospitals. I mean, we have built up 334 quarantine centers. I mean, these are the COVID care centers. I mean, there's almost 73,000 beds available in these centers. And then we have 16 government hospitals in 13 districts, plus 18 private hospitals that have been requisitioned with a cumulative capacity of more than 16,000 hospital beds, 20% of it ICU, for district-level COVID care. In addition, there are 5 COVID state-level hospitals for critical care patients with a net of about 2,800 beds, 1,000 ventilators, most of them ICU beds. So, and this is not just the beds, but also the human resources, the doctors, the nurses, well-trained, well-mapped. So, in the sense, so we are fairly well prepared in terms of identification, testing, referral, treatment. I mean, that's really the protocol that is set in place.
I think you've mentioned it in great detail. Let's take our first viewer who's dialing into our newsroom this evening. That's Manikandan. Manikandan from Chennai. Manikandan, good evening. What's your question? Go ahead.
Good evening.
Let's take our first viewer who's dialing into our newsroom. Manikandan from Chennai. Mr. Manikandan, why don't you put your television on mute? You put your television on mute so that you can hear, because if you keep your television volume on, there will be an echo. So you'll have to put that on mute and then ask your question.
Good evening. Yeah, I already put it off.
Yes.
Put it off. Yeah, the question is...
Yeah, why don't you go ahead, ask your question. Do you have a question on lockdown movement?
Yes. Why not all the states follow the MHA guidelines? And every state is there are a lot of confusion regarding the restriction as well as relaxation on MHA guidelines. In the same...
Okay.
Every state is following. I think there are a lot of confusion which is
I think Dr. Ramesh
can
take that question.
Yeah. Mr. Mani, let me say this.
No, I think
The
Dr. Ramesh
Ministry
can
of
take that
Commerce,
question. Dr. Ramesh, I think Manikandan's basic point is that
yes.
there is a lot of confusion on MHA guidelines. So why don't you tell him about what different states are doing, the methodology that they're adopting in deciding on whether or not they can let non-essential shops be open.
Yes, let me say this. The Ministry of Home Affairs has very clear authority to issue directives, and these directives are nationwide. They apply to everyone. I don't think there should be any scope or space for confusion on any count. However, let me qualify. The local governments, and especially in the cities, metropolitan cities and the urban areas, which really have the concentration of the potential coronavirus infection, could take a call depending on the prevailing circumstances, how compliant and how disciplined and how organized the citizens are in that locality. So, I mean, this depends on various parameters which are local. I mean, these are very clearly spelled out in both the instructions of the Ministry of Home Affairs as well as that of the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare of Government of India, and the time-to-time directives that different state governments are issuing. And I request Mr. Mani and others to refer to these instructions. There is no confusion on this count, and whatever is being done by the government is really in the interest of the public and their health.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was lost in translation. This Mr. Ramesh. I think Dr. Ramesh. I think it was lost in translation this morning, and I think it's a good thing that the MHA came out with a clarification. Let me also go across to Mr. Pani. Mr. Pani from Bengaluru. Are you there, Mr. Pani? Go ahead. Ask Dr. Ramesh your question.
Yes, Dr. Ramesh. This is with regard to the opening up of IT and ITS companies within the framework of MHA guidelines. MHA guidelines and the state governments have enabled IT and ITS companies to open and then work with one-third strength or 50% strength, because they are all non-polluting companies, non-manufacturing companies. There is no health hazard. On the same parallel, why not the corporate offices where the policy decisions are being taken, where treasury management is being done, can be open up? Also, make sure that they are all open with 30% strength or 50% strength. See, some of the bigger companies which are all locked up and closed could not release vendor payments, multiple vendor payments, for the simple reason that dual signatories are not available to make payments. If it is allowed to open, all vendors get their payment, there is a circulation of money, livelihood comes, and the action also comes in.
I think I get your question, Mr. Pani. Mr. Pani, I think the substance of your question is understood, but I don't know whether Dr. Ramesh is in a position to answer that question. It's a policy question, but maybe Dr. Ramesh, you want to talk about the restrictions. If you just want to briefly respond to what Mr. Pani asked.
Yeah, I can answer this in a general way, because the government, both the central government and the state governments, are reviewing the situation on a real-time basis, and they are taking decisions to protect lives as well as livelihoods. So it's a very delicate balance, and that's why you can see this incremental unfolding of the economic activity. I mean, they've taken a very concrete decision with reference to the IT industry, and I'm sure the decisions would soon be taken with regard to the other vital industries as well, because the important thing, of course, is that can you maintain the physical distance, observe all those precautions that prevent the spread of infection.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I think we're getting in more viewers into our studios so that they can ask that question to Dr. Ramesh. Dr. Ramesh, while we wait for the next caller to be connected, let me take the opportunity to ask you this question about the center-state relationship at a time like this, and I think many states, and I think it's very encouraging the manner in which all states have come together and worked. Of course, in the last few days there have been differences. I think we have we have another caller. I'll just take this caller and then put that question. Mr. SP Shah dialing in from Faridabad. Mr. Shah, your question to Dr. Ramesh. Go ahead. Any lockdown movement related question?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Ramesh.
Good evening, sir.
I would like to know that the liquor shop which are registered under the Shops Act will be open or not, as far as the gutka and tobacco shops are closed, and the shops of liquor shop which are registered under the Shops Act will be open or not.
No, that's a decision to be taken by the union government as well as the respective state governments. As far as my state, Andhra Pradesh, is concerned, they remain closed. There are no directives from Government of India.
I think there was also, if I can add to that, Dr. Ramesh, because we had a clarity. I think we had a clarity on that, on the question of liquor shops. I know some political parties, some leaders, there have been voices here and there. But I think the MHA clarification made it clear that across India, till the end of the lockdown, liquor shops cannot open. That is still prohibited. I hope that answers the question of Mr. Shah. But I was asking you the question of the federal relationship. Okay, I think we have another caller. I hope I can ask you this question before the end of the show. But I think we have Ashok. Ashok is called Ashok Surya. Ashok Surya is calling in from Chennai. Ashok, your question to Dr. Ramesh. Go ahead.
Good evening, sir. My question is, will the gym equipment shops be allowed to function?
As we speak, I mean, the MHA has not relaxed restrictions on the gyms because that's where you really people come together and there's a close proximity. So that's likely to, and it's also a closed space. So that has its own health hazards in terms of spread of infection. So as we speak, the MHA has not permitted opening of the gyms.
Gym equipment, sir. Only the equipment store, like the machines and the equipment that they sell.
That depends again on the concerned state governments and in the green zones.
Okay, stay with us, Dr. Ramesh. What we'll do is we'll take a short break. We'll take a short break and we'll come back